Hi, I'm Andrew Spieler.
And I'm Mary Hope Rennie.
And you're watching or listening to Behind the Sign, real stories from real estate. Welcome back to another episode. We're joined with not one, but two special guests today. Mary Hope, do you want to do an introduction down there?
Thank you, Lisa, for coming. This is Lisa Scacchi from our Keller Williams Metropolitan Office. And Lisa, how long have you been an agent?
I've been an agent 9 years with Keller Williams only.
Wonderful, wonderful.
That's great. And this handsome bloke next to me here is Mr. Joe Gagnon from Blue Water Mortgage. Thanks for being on the podcast,
That was
Joe.
really nice
Thanks
of you,
for having us.
Andrew.
Yeah, of course.
That was a very nice compliment you gave him.
Yeah, I mean, he shows up every day dressed like in a collared shirt, nice pants. He is here dressed to impress, and I appreciate it. So it's also both of yours first time on the podcast. It's been kind of a running gag, have you noticed, Mary Hope? That
Yes.
we're asking, is this your first time? And they're like, yes, it is. Yes.
Most everybody's. This was my first ever being on a podcast when we started this, so.
What we'd like to do today is sort of talk a little bit about the relationship and the importance primarily of the relationship between an agent and a trusted lender-vendor, right? The two of you have worked together, I assume, quite a bit over the years.
Sure.
Yes. So, Lisa, could you speak a little bit to sort of when you started, what was the process like in trying to sort of vet your team, if you will, right? Like as you were getting going, I remember when I, got licensed, there were people from all over the place trying to take me out to lunch and, wine and dine me to do stuff. And I mean, that was very nice of them, obviously. But as far as like figuring out who do you work well with, how do you develop trust, and how did Joe kind of come into the picture for you on the lending side?
So for me, it definitely is a process because you're right. As soon as you get your license, you get phone calls, emails, everyone wanting to take you to lunch.
Love letters.
Love letters, sending roses and chocolates. But then you really have to rely on, their background, but also, agents that you're working with. Who are their tried and true partnerships. And you learn pretty quickly the trusted vendors out there that you can rely on. For me, I had to trust the brokerage I was with. If they're standing behind a particular lender, that spoke volumes to me. That was all I knew, and I had to trust that. So pretty quickly, I was looking to Joe to work with, and it's just the partnership has been outstanding, and just again, trust, the communication, and just it's everything to me to know that if Joe has the contract and his team, that one less thing we have to worry about.
Right. Your client's going to be taken care of in good hands with Joe.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Do you remember how you swooned, wined, and dined, Lisa? Did you have any tactics?
I don't remember because it was about 9 years ago. I think we probably went to coffee or lunch, which is kind of the normal kind of get to know you thing. We kind of chatted. We answered some questions. And really, I think the relationship probably started like any other. As the first couple pre-approvals we did, everything went smoothly, and so we just kind of kept working together from there. But to be honest, 9 years ago, I don't really recall how our first conversations happened.
You don't remember that first moment of meeting. No, but
I looked into her eyes and I
eyes on you.
said, "Please be working with me."
Well, you know what? I was thinking about this when you were mentioning that you trusted the brokerage. And so you trusted him with your first deal or whatever that was. And if he had not done a good job, would you have worked with him again?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's
frankly,
a big deal.
my reputation is also on the line when I'm referring, a lender out. I liken it to someone, saying, "What's your favorite restaurant?" Well, I'm not going to give you a list of 5 of my favorite restaurants. If you're asking me what my favorite restaurant is, I'm going to give you my one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's start talking a little bit, and then we'll kind of go into a little bit of yours. Lisa, when you first meet a buyer, right?
Right.
Usually they're reaching out to you first. sometimes they reach out to the lender first, but am I correct for both of you that it's usually starting with the agent, right? You have a relationship. What does that first look like? Let's someone, if, I'm a friend of yours and I say, hey, Joe Smith wants to buy a house, and I give you their name. How does that start for you with a buyer?
A phone call, typically. Let's get together. But in that 10-minute phone call, I want to get to know them as much as I can. The basics. Where are you at now? What are you looking for? Get some background. Just get to know them a little bit personally. Stop and listen to their answers. And then, very early on in that conversation is, are you working with a lender? And if you are, who is that? And how's that going so far? How have you been connected to this lender? If not, terrific. I have somebody for you.
Perfect.
Yep. And just to be able to say, I have a team behind me that, I do refer to it as my team of support for you. So it's
right
everything.
at the beginning, you start talking about you need to get a pre-approval.
Absolutely.
You don't show them houses before they talk to a lender?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Why
Why
not?
not?
Well,
was gonna say, why?
Because they kind of have an idea of what they want,
Yep.
what they can afford, right? They're ready to get into those houses.
yeah, we have to do our homework and understand what kind of houses can we look at. Are they, can they purchase a home that doesn't have heat? Probably not. Right? So, those types of things, but also what kind of financing are they going to qualify for? How much are they putting down? It's all about just the more information, the better, doing your homework, not wasting anyone's time, and really being able to hone in on their needs and who they are. We'll talk quickly about setting them up with a listing cart. We also talk very quickly about, them, quote, hiring me as their agent, as their realtor. But very early on, we'll be meeting with the lender that I'm referring them to. Like tonight, we're having a first-time meeting at 5:00 with a buyer.
So what does that look like? Maybe Joe, what does that look like when Lisa calls you or connects you with someone and you've never met them? What does that look like? Because I know, kind of like we said, buyers are anxious to just get into the houses and see them and just feel it out. And by the time they've reached both of you, they've spent hours on Zillow. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
The Z word.
Yeah. So where do you start, Joe?
Yeah, for me, somewhat similar to Lisa. I like to have a conversation with them, whether it's over the phone or face-to-face, get to know them a little bit, really what their background is, whether they're first-time home buyers or they're experienced in buying, and really what their goals are. That's like the biggest thing. Like, how much money are they comfortable with spending per month on the mortgage, and then also what they're comfortable with coming out of pocket for. In what I mean for cash to close, how much can they afford to put down for down payment and closing costs? Those are very important because we don't want to put anybody in a position where they're what we call house poor. They're only working to pay their mortgage. That's a bad situation. So we're very cognizant about that. So get to know them a little bit. I explain the process to them from where we sit today before we even talk about any of their information and the pre-approval until they're closed and sitting at the closing table signing documents to get the keys. So we explain all that process. And then at that point, we go through the pre-approval process. And basically what that involves is me collecting all their information, personal information, asset, income, look at their credit report. And then what I'll do from there is we'll actually go over what the numbers look like. I will show them in a written offer, what their monthly payment looks like, what their sales price is, how much money they need out of pocket, their monthly payment. Then, again, answer all their questions from there. Just really make sure they're comfortable with the scenario.
That seems like a lot of work. And I mean, I say that because a lot of buyers, I'm going to be the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Like, let me just look online and get a calculator of what I can afford. I don't want to pull my credit until I really know if I want to do this. You've probably heard this because it takes time, and they're worried. What if I can't do it? What would you say?
You mean if somebody can't get to where they're
Well,
looking
that
for?
they're kind of pushing back, that they don't want to start this process because they're just feeling it out.
Yeah. So we just have a conversation about that. That actually happens on a regular basis.
Right.
That somebody doesn't want their credit pulled because they're afraid their scores will go down, or they're kind of just starting to feel things out, and they may not trust anybody that they're speaking to fully yet to be able to give all their personal information. So we really just talk about that, and what I'll to make them feel a little bit more comfortable, I'll kind of start running numbers with them on I don't want to say a fictitious scenario, but we haven't gone to the point where we're solidified with credit scores and whatnot. But let's start talking about numbers. Okay, here's what a monthly payment looks like for this scenario with these amount of taxes, because a lot of home buyers, especially first-time home buyers, don't necessarily realize that we add in, say, property taxes to their payment, a homeowner's insurance payment. If they're not putting 20% down, they may have PMI. That again is added to their monthly payment. So sometimes they don't realize all of these different pieces, or if they buy a condo fee or an HOA fee, right? And those can be very expensive in New Hampshire and say Boston or Massachusetts. So we kind of just go over all that. Then if they're comfortable, then we can move forward. But really, that's the goal: is getting the client comfortable first, and then we can take the next steps when they're ready to do so.
Well, I haven't done a deal with Joe, but I have sent prospective buyer clients to you, I think maybe 2 at this point. And what I love is that as a lender with a relationship, you become sort of like a first pass litmus test for the viability of the client.
Yes.
Right? Because I could go and spend tons of time, right, as an agent with the buyers, not even looking at homes, just meeting with them and talking to them and hearing what it is that they're looking for and all that. And that's a lot of time and energy wasted, right, if they end up not being actually credible, right? Like
that's
if they don't have the means to go after what they're looking for. And, so very early on for me, I was like, oh, that's great, because I can send them over here and sniff them out. And if they don't call Joe, or if they say, yeah, I'll get back to you or whatever, then I know I'm going to wait and I'm going to hold off and I'm not going to pursue, because they're not following through with somebody that I know and trust and going through the process in the correct steps necessary. And they're not putting the cart before the horse, right?
Right.
And that they're serious.
Right.
So,
or the other thing that we see a lot is, people start looking online, as you had mentioned Zillow, right? And they see a $600,000 house and the thing is gorgeous and it's everything that they wanted, but they don't necessarily realize that say $600,000 home comes with this monthly payment, and they're like, whoa, that's way more than I thought,
right?
So or
the opposite,
or the
too,
opposite,
happens,
right? Or they may not even realize, like this does sometimes happen, is their credit scores could be lower than they think, which changes the scenario. Different programs or higher interest rate, because maybe they had a medical collection that got dumped on there that they didn't even know about, and that can change things. So it's a big surprise almost every time, with
Good,
every
bad,
client,
and the
it's
ugly,
different.
right?
And so we just have to kind of, as you guys are saying, and we're all saying, work as a team to kind of help them understand what the situation is, what the process is, and, get them to their actually end goals by asking the right questions and spending the time with them.
It's a process, helping them with the fact finding, and that happens all the time as far as the credit report, and them not realizing what's on there and what their credit score actually is compared to what they might have seen somewhere else.
Right.
Correct.
Right. And I think it's interesting. Sometimes people are afraid of what they don't know, right? And so many times, and probably you can speak to this, Lisa, my thoughts are that the more they know, the more power they have to make decisions. And so many times clients are frozen because they don't know enough. Yet they're waiting to reach out to a lender because they're trying to figure things out. Like so many times, I always say, just let's talk, because you don't know what may be an opportunity, or they're waiting for that 20% down that their parents said they had to have before they talk to anybody. What is your experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always encouraging buyers to go to open houses. Even if it's a property you might not think you're interested in, what you see online, you might see something in person that might change your mind. But also, be open-minded to the properties that have maybe been on for 2 weekends, and other buyers have passed them by.
I love how we say 2 weekends.
Yeah.
9 years ago, and we'll go back to that 9 years ago thing, 2 weeks was not a very long time on the market.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But that also in and of itself, every market is so different, and if we don't have a team together working it out, there's going to be things that Joe knows that you don't know, or that you can guide Joe because you know this, and this about them, and things like that. We were just talking actually at the office meeting today about our belief systems, and the two that we were talking about were teamwork and trust. And that's exactly what you've been talking about. Right. We have to have a team, you, the lender, and the client, but then also it could take a little time to build that trust. Yeah. And how would you say, Lisa, that do you grow that trust? Because it's usually not there automatically. Now, if they were referred to you and they trust that person, they come to you. Same thing, if they trust Lisa, they trust you. But how do you usually build that trust?
That can be a process. I think sometimes there's a little bit of a stigmatism around the word realtors. But I think relationship building, being there, communicating, and showing them that, you really are looking out for their best interests with the team that you have behind you. Going to Monarch Title and asking questions, whether Monarch Title already has this contract or not yet, but just asking questions about a particular property. And knowing that we have those resources and sharing that with your client, that we have these resources in-house, I think really can build that trust. Also talking about personal experiences. I recently bought a home. Talking about my own personal experiences really helped me with sellers as well.
Right? Has that not opened your eyes again?
Certainly has. Yeah. Certainly has. So I think being human and showing them that you're human, like I said, being there. And I do think that it has been really, really beneficial to, I know we're really, beating a dead horse here. You're not a horse, but really talking about that you have the camaraderie with, terrific mortgage officer, mortgage brokerage, and and also what has been really great is coming here with your client. Meeting them here and walking them through the office.
Not the studio per se.
Right, Terrifying them, interrogating them at the studio.
It's a nice studio. But to be able to say, this is where Blue Water Mortgage is. This is where Monarch Title is. Gives you the credibility. That's right. That's right. Yeah. I think that that does really help build that trust. That I really do work here. That's my name on that door, and right. So. Yeah. All of that, and I think it's just over time. Over time, you then become a therapist and a friend, and I think we all want that in someone that we're hiring to be part of such a huge transaction in their lives. They want you to be a person that they can rely on, and I think at the end of the day, when the transaction is over, if you can say that you know that you did a good job for them and represented them and were honest and held their hand every step of the way. Yeah. That's really what every buyer wants.
Yeah, I agree. Joe, what would you say that builds the greatest trust for you as a lender? It's a different relationship you have.
It is a
You're
different
not
relationship.
You're not walking hours and hours in houses,
Right.
chatting about and seeing their kids all day.
Correct. So for us, it's really answering the phone, answering their questions, because there's many, running different scenarios for them. As you know, as Lisa said, they're out looking at different open houses or different properties that Lisa's showing them, and showing them what those payments look like, what that purchase scenario looks like, and then walking them through again that process. Really, that's how we're bonding, mostly. And really, it's answering questions on the property. You know, hey, I'm doing a VA loan, and there's peeling paint on the shed that's out back. Is that a problem? Well,
I think I've asked you that a few times.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So-
it depends.
and right,
It
it's always depends, right? It's always depends.
Depends on what time of the
true.
day the appraiser comes
That's
out.
right. That's right. If he's in a bad mood or not. No, kidding. All appraisers.
We love our appraisers.
Yes, but it's more that, because I don't
Yeah.
get to spend a lot of time with them, say going from house to house or in that
Right.
aspect. So for us, it's really just being there to get the numbers, answer questions, and kind of talking them through their different scenarios. And honestly, as Lisa kind of mentioned, obviously buying a house is usually somebody's largest transaction.
Absolutely.
People get very, very nervous. So we put on the therapist hat a lot as well. Everything's going to be fine. You guys can more than afford this. We've talked about this. Those are some of the biggest concerns. So really kind of listening to people's concerns, reassuring them that we wouldn't be here with a pre-approval if they couldn't afford that home.
Right.
And explaining to them that, you know, there's a big difference between renting and, say, owning, because you're building your own wealth, as opposed to renting, you're paying somebody else's mortgage, and all that money is kind of a waste. So kind of just, like I said, just kind of going through all of those different aspects, and it helps a lot.
So we have a question we sort of tend to ask in closing here, and it's if you could give one bit of advice, each of you, on, I would say, how to go about finding a good partnership, a good relationship, you know, specifically between an agent and a lender from either side of the table, right? Like, how do you try to find agents that you know you want to work with, who are going to be bringing you clients that are actually going to be worth your time and energy, and vice versa, finding someone that you know you can trust to pass your clients off to, because at the end of the day,
Right.
you're extensions of each other, right? So how do you sort
Good
of suggest to anybody who either is new getting into this or who's been doing this a long time, but maybe their relationship has come to an end with a lender, maybe they just retired or something, and so now they got to go out and find somebody new. What would you say? What would you say, Joe?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think experience is really, for a lender, experience is really the key. Things are changing all the time. This business is really difficult. You really have to know all the little tiny rules that are like buried in some of these programs. There's so many little tiny things that you can get tripped up on if you don't have the experience, that could really torpedo a deal. So I think the experience, and honestly, how many deals a lender closes per year, I think that matters, because again, the more deals you see, the more experience you have, the more say little challenges or whatever you've overcome, and that's how you learn how to navigate. Like I always say, any lender can close an 800 credit, 30% down. Their debt to income is 10%. Anybody can close that. That's
Are
a
you
cream
sure?
puff deal.
Are you sure anyone?
Well, if you mess that one up, we got really problems. It's really the stuff that's hard, that say us, we really make our money on, that we really have to work the deal where, like I said, the debt to income ratios are high, their credit scores are low, they don't have a lot of money to work with. That's really where experience comes in on how to get this deal to the closing table. So I think really experience makes a big difference.
Yep. So looking at the resume,
Yep,
past
resume,
experience,
yep,
talking
how
to other
long they've
people.
been in the business, how many deals they close.
Yeah. Knowing what stats to actually look at and ask about.
Right. And personality. Like you really want, also, I think you need to be with somebody that's fairly patient, that's pretty patient, that is, and also willing to sit down face to face and work with people. And also, I think a big one, like you guys are all realtors, right? Answering the phone. Like you want somebody that's going to answer the phone, not just Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Like we need to answer the phone.
That's not when offers are written.
That's right. It's after hours. It's weekends. It's holidays. It's Super Bowl. Like there's a funny story that's told from my friends that I was having a Super Bowl party at my house, and there was like 25 people at my house. And I disappeared in the middle of that, and I was in my office writing pre-approvals. And some of my friends actually came in the office, and they said, "We thought you left. It's my own party." But I closed my office door at my house and was working because that needs to happen. So I think all of that comes into play when somebody's choosing a lender.
Yeah, great.
And I can speak to that. I've called him many times, and I'm right in the middle of a tournament. Don't worry about it. What do you need?
Yep.
A fishing tournament on his boat, and get the pre-approval within an hour. So I can speak to that. I can definitely attest to that. As far as what I would suggest to realtors looking to work with, a new team or to have a new lender that they trust, ask fellow realtors that you trust. You see people closing deals. Who are they using? Yes, do your research. Honestly, how long have they been in business for? And yeah, I think knowing that I had this brokerage of so many successful agents who were already connected with a lenders that they trust, to me, to a certain extent, yes, you want to build your own relationships, but it was also about, well, if it's working for them, it'll work for me. And thus far, you've been all right.
Well, you're sitting next to each other.
Right.
There's a reason.
But no, truly, I think ask other realtors that you look up to, that you trust. There's just like realtors, there's plenty of loan officers out there, plenty of title companies out there, plenty of realtors out there. Everyone works differently. Make sure that you guys have the relationship and that you can build the trust and can communicate really well, because that's hugely important. It's everything.
Yeah, great.
That's great.
I think those are two very solid answers, and I think the two of you both have a very similar sense of humor, which, I mean, like looking at you both right now, you're both smiling with the same eyes at me. Like you guys are connected.
Well, I'm a little sad that through this podcast we haven't heard Joe sing. He was bebopping a little bit before. That might have to come out. I hope you were recording or something.
Well, I mean, we can always go back and hear a little.
I don't think we need to hear that again.
All right.
He's getting red now. He's getting red.
Well, on your next episode visit, we're gonna intro with that.
Okay.
Was that too painful?
Okay. Yeah.
Lisa and Joe, was that too painful?
No, it was great.
Not yet. Only hurt a little bit. No.
Yeah.
No, it only hurt a little bit. Would you do this again with us?
Pinch under the table
That's
was
right.
what hurt.
I know.
No, it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, this
for
is
having
great.
me.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
thank you
Yeah,
so much.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Behind the Sign, Real Stories from Real Estate.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and gained a little insight into the world behind those for sale signs.
Today's episode was brought to you by Keller Williams Realty Metropolitan, proudly serving New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts. A special thank you to our agents, leadership, and partners at KW Metro for their continued support.
And thanks to you, our amazing listeners and viewers. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Leave us a review or comment. We love hearing your feedback, and it helps more people discover the show.
And if you have a real estate story you'd like to share or a question you want answered on a future episode, reach out to us at metro.kw.com or find us on Instagram, handle at KWMetroNH.
Until next time, we'll see you
Behind the Sign.